Dave Beck from listener-supported Classical King FM in Seattle at 98.1, and it's my great honor this afternoon to be your host as we remember the life and legacy of our friend, colleague, teacher, mentor, and artistic inspiration and guide, Paul Taub. We're here in the Royal Room in Seattle with a great celebration, just a couple of days, in fact, after what would have been Paul's 69th birthday, presenting some of the amazing music that Paul Taub's artistry and spirit and presence had a hand in bringing into the world. There's a lot to get to in the next few hours, so for the most part, I'll simply let the performers, composers, and the music itself say what needs to be said. We'll begin with a video compilation highlighting Paul's collaboration with the Seattle Chamber Players and the composer and vocalist Agatha Zubel. Her piece Cascando, created especially for the Seattle Chamber Players in 2007, is based on a text of Samuel Beckett. Having written the piece for her own phenomenal voice, Zubel instructs the soprano to produce unusual sounds covering a huge range of vocal possibilities. The instrumental forces in the music evoke the romantic sensibilities of Chopin and Polish folk music. We'll also hear in this first video one of the folk song settings of Luciano Berio, including Black, Black, Black from Folk Songs of 1964.
Black, black, black is the color of my true love's hair. His lips are something rosy fair, the sweetest smile and the kindest hands. I love the grass whereon he stands. I love my love and what he knows. I love the grass whereon he goes. If he no more on earth will be, 'twill surely be the end of me. Black, black, black is the color of my true love's hair. His lips are something rosy fair, the sweetest smile and the kindest hands. I love the grass whereon he stands.
Piece is an example of all the music that Paul Taub brought into the world through his work commissioning new music and encouraging extraordinary talent. Angelique Poteet is a native Pacific Northwesterner who plays clarinet and composes. She carries on the sort of work Paul did as an administrator as well in her current role as director of the Young Composers Workshop for the Seattle Symphony. Angelique wrote Urban Scenes in 2015. For the piece, Paul wanted a modified Schoenberg-Pierre Lunaire ensemble, minus percussion, where double bass replaced the typical violin part in order to create more balance with the high wind parts. Angelique writes, the substitution motivated me to look to Seattle's varied music history for inspiration, including its vibrant jazz and alternative rock scenes. I also wanted to incorporate some quintessential Seattle features for overarching movement ideas. The first movement, Traffic, evokes imagery of rumbling engines and frantic merging, starts and stops. Second movement, Snow Day, takes a nostalgic turn, longing for the stillness and serenity of snowfall that is becoming less frequent in the Puget Sound area. The final movement, Nightlife, recreates a sense of strolling downtown from one live music venue to another, where walking bass lines blur into heavy metal grooves. Here's Urban Scenes by Angelique Poteet. Jeffrey Barker is the flutist here, clarinetist Angelique Poteet, cellist Rose Bellini, Joe Kaufman, bass, and Oksana Izhokina is the pianist. The clarinetist, vocalist, improviser, and electronics artist Beth Fleener's work is known by experimental, classical, jazz, and rock musicians in our region and beyond. For the occasion today, she's created a work for amplified clarinet and voice called All for Paul. This is what she says about her piece. Paul Taub stands as one of the great champions and pillars of influence in my life. I met him 23 years ago when I was only 17 and was just starting out on the road to find my individual artistic voice. He was there for me from the moment of my entrance audition and interview for Cornish College, always encouraging me to move in the direction of my individual sound, to stay grounded in the search, uncovering discipline of craft and dedication to intuition. He was there when I first started improvising. He intervened when I thought I didn't have anything to contribute as a musician, and he called me back into being a maker of sound. He introduced me to so much new music. Later, as colleagues, we would improvise together, and he cheered me on as I became a composer, a transition and addition I never imagined for myself. Paul possessed the seemingly magical ability to see potential in an individual before they recognized what could be possible. 2 decades later, now firmly rooted in my own sound, continually expanding vision, and a strong career as a performing multi-instrumentalist, improviser, and composer, my immense gratitude goes out to him, and he will always and forever, with great love and respect, be in my life. For this memorial performance, I felt it most important to improvise a moment for Paul, a moment to simply remember, take a deep breath, bring my fully formed and present self to the table, and let sound guide me where it wants to go in his honor. Thank you, Paul, for everything. You gave me the keys to your studio and to the universe. There are no adequate words for that, only music to be made. Here's All for Paul by Beth Fleener. A world premiere now from one of the Cornish College colleagues of Paul Taub, composer, performer, and teacher, and Cornish professor emeritus of music, Jared Powell. Jared's new piece is Threnody for Paul. Jared writes, Paul was my friend and colleague for more than 35 years. I wrote this piece for him in the week following his death as I was processing the shock and loss of his sudden passing. It is a threnody, a kind of lamentation. As I thought about the instrumentation, I thought of our mutual friend and colleague, the pianist and conductor Roger Nelson, who performed so many times with Paul over the years, especially in the great Seattle new music ensembles like the New Performance Group and Taneko. Roger had just recently told me that he was learning viola, and I immediately imagined him playing with his daughter Ariana, a cellist. So I wrote this duet for viola and cello. In the video, Ariana is joined by her mother, Karen Iglitzin, on viola. Roger joins too, plucking and humming in a kind of ghost part I think Paul would have appreciated. Artur Avanesov is an Armenian composer and pianist who teaches at the American University of Armenia. He's been one of the collaborators over the years with the ensemble that Paul Taub co-founded, the Seattle Chamber Players. Artur's composition from 2004 is called Leise. The title is a German word meaning quietly or gently. The music represents a kind of extremely slow barcarola, where all the principal harmonic and melodic lines seem to be plunged into a fog. Thus, the clarinet part can be considered as reminiscent of haunting Armenian instrumental tunes, but in an unreal way, whispering the melody within the dynamic scale ranging from barely audible to quiet. The almost imperceptible allusions of Brahms' Clarinet Sonata, Opus 120, number 1, in the middle part of the piece are also very important, creating the different, very distant temporal flatnesses. Here's Leise by Artur Avanesov. Lori DeLuca is the clarinetist, partnering here with pianist Oksana Izhokina.
Hi there. Before I play this gorgeous piece, I would like to share a few words and memories of Paul. I met Paul in 1987, soon after I moved to Seattle, and within a short period of time, I was invited to join the new performance group that he was involved at Cornish College, and we, of course, became friends immediately. Paul was always one to be so interested in so many different kinds of people and engaging on so many levels, different topics, subject matter. He was a very eclectic Renaissance type of person. And it's really impossible to summarize everything that I've been through with Paul, but I want to highlight a few moments, memories that are like time capsules for me. Along with my colleagues, David Saby, Misha Schmidt, and Elena Dubinets, of course, we were all part of the Seattle Chamber Players, and I think of it now as we were like playmates. We were coming of age together, and we learned from each other. We shared our love of classical, but then contemporary music, and we had so many projects, and so many of them, in the beginning at least, were spearheaded by Paul. His ideas, he couldn't wait to talk to me after a concert about our next project and what he wanted to do, and sometimes it was like, Paul, let's just take a moment and enjoy this, the fact that we just did this huge project, but he was raring to go. He also was a really good friend, and there were moments of cross-country skiing and skinny dipping and hiking, and I remember that I went to look at a house I was thinking about buying, and he came along with me. He was the first person besides myself to see this house, which I ended up buying, and I'm still living in it 32 years later. He was the first person that taught me that it was possible to even commission music. And he had a project of commissioning 8 or 10 Seattle composers, all friends of his. He put together a concert, he recorded it. I mean, this was brand new to me. I didn't know somebody could do this. And of course, this spilled out into the Seattle Chamber Players projects for the next 25 years. We celebrated birthdays and holidays together. He was a great travel companion. Within our group, we have so many stories about Paul, and some are private, and I think maybe later on this program you'll hear a few from David and Misha. But Paul was just a world traveler, and he was very comfortable in many different cultures. And I remember trying to find our way through the subway in Moscow, Russia, and he had his guide and the Cyrillic alphabet, and he's looking up and down and trying, the fonts were different, so it was very confusing, but we got to where we needed to. So, I mean, we were on this journey together for many, many years. We would meet at the farmers markets on Saturday to have coffee and catch up and just enjoy what was happening in each of our lives. And the last time that I saw him was similar to one of those occasions. It was probably in late February, and I had gone to Seawolf Bakery to pick up a fresh loaf of bread, and he had taken up baking sourdough bread during the pandemic, and he was going to Seawolf to buy some more flour. Little did I know, it was complete serendipity. I was leaving, ready to step off the curb to get to my car, and I see this blue Toyota Prius show up, do a U-turn in the middle of the road, like, who is this guy? And I look, and it's Paul. And I'm standing there, hi, Paul. He goes, oh, hi, Lori. And he gets out of the car, and he said, what are you doing here? I'm buying bread. What are you doing here? I'm buying flour to bake bread. And that was the last time we spoke, and that was 2 weeks before his, no, actually 2 days before his final live performance at St. James. And the end was soon to come, little did we know. Paul, you've made an enormous contribution to me and to all of our community, both local, national, international, creating so many pieces, so many friendships, and I thank you for your generous spirit.
Another regular collaborator over the years with Paul and the Seattle Chamber Players has been University of Washington artist in residence Christina Valdez. She is featured today in music composed in 1994 by Japan's preeminent living creator of new music, Toshio Hosokawa. Nachtklänge from 1994 features his signature melding of Western avant-garde art and traditional Japanese culture. In describing his music, the composer says, "This piece consists of 6 short haiku-like sections connected to each other like the stanzas of Japanese linked verse. Borrowing a tone rove from a song of Anton Webern, I composed a variation on it according to my own method. The variation is evolved by taking one element from the original verse and using it as a composition element in the next verse, and so on. What I'm trying to do here is bring about the slightest of variations, not only in the realm of audible sound, but also in the realm of blank space, the pauses between sounds where nothing can be heard." Here's Christina Valdez with Nachtklänge by Toshio Hosokawa.
Wanted to say how I came to choose this piece for Paul's memorial. And that is, I had the pleasure and privilege of playing music by Hosokawa with Paul several times. Paul was instrumental in commissioning Hosokawa to write his piece Lead for flute and piano back in 2007. That was a commission for the National Flute Association. I believe it was their required piece that year for the competition. And Hosokawa dedicated that piece to Paul. And that work is very different from what you're going to hear with this piece, but I think this demonstrates what an adventurous spirit Paul was, that this was the kind of music Hosokawa had been composing, and this was who he wanted to introduce to a much broader and younger artist.
Joining us next via video are members of Denmark's Figura Ensemble, who introduced their performance in this note that they've asked me to share. Figura Ensemble worked together with Seattle Chamber Players for the first time in 2008 in Copenhagen. The collaboration continued in Seattle in 2010 and later again in Copenhagen. A CD release, Preludes to Disaster, documents in the most beautiful way the collaboration between the two sister ensembles. During the years, the contact has continued, and it has remained a great wish to do it again, not least with Paul, who, on the above-mentioned CD, joined Figura in Anders Brødgaard's piece Galgenlieder. We wish to contribute to this important concert with a song by composer Peter Bruun and author Ursula Anja Olsen. Both have been members of the ensemble since 2002, and the collaboration between Peter and Seattle Chamber Players goes back to 2004, where he participated in the SCP's renowned Icebreaker Festival. The song is the first of 3 folk songs. The idea was inspired by old Danish folk songs from the time before Christianity, where songs were about love and lovers and about the vivifying but also dark and threatening powers of nature. And just to quote one section of the song, the final words, "I walked myself into the wonderful morning, wonderful morning. I went to the house, I went to his door. Apples were black, nothing was as before. I walked myself into the wonderful morning to extinguish the sorrow, to extinguish the grief."
Jeg gik mig ud i den vidunderlige morgen, vidunderlige morgen.
One of my favorite memories of hosting in-studio live music on the radio over the years was a visit maybe 10 years ago now by Paul Taub and his then Cornish colleague, one of Brazil's great musicians who makes his home in Seattle, Jovinos Santos Neto. The musical and personal rapport between these two artists that they had together made for such rich and insightful conversation and, of course, brilliant music making. Paul's embrace of Jovino's rich musical heritage was just one of the pleasures of hearing these two discuss and make music together. Jovino's Sertão Carioca from 2003 is an example of the energetic grooves and vibrant harmonies and melodies by Jovino that tap into centuries-old musical traditions and his own adventuresome musical imagination. Sertão Carioca, written in an extended choro format, it's ripe with references to Jovino's musical compatriots like his brilliant mentor Hermato Pascoal. Jovino wrote this piece originally for Paul Taub. Here's Leanna Keith, flute, with Jovino Santos Neto.
Just a brief word to say that thank you to Paul Taub. He really received me when I came to Seattle with open arms, musically, and also as a friend and colleague. Besides this piece, it's dedicated to Paul Taub. Sertão Carioca refers to the hinterlands of Rio, of the city of Rio de Janeiro, where I was born. And this is also a second dedication to my father, who passed away 3 weeks ago today, who lived his whole life in Sertão Carioca. And thank you so much for the honor to play this piece with me. Thank you.
video contribution now from violinist Eric Rines, playing a solo work by the Pulitzer Prize-winning Israeli-American composer Shulamit Ran. Shulamit Ran's inscriptions from 1995 touch on a broad range of moods and playing techniques for solo violin in an effort to carve out, with a relatively textural palette, 3 distinct spaces in time. Her music from this period is described as mostly fantasy-like, featuring great contrasts and have a sharply dramatic profile. Ran explores the dramatic potential of a certain compositional idea or of specific musical instruments and sets musical elements in action similar to theatrical personnel in a play. Here's Eric Rines with Rondino, mostly tongue-in-cheek, from Inscriptions by Shulamit Ran.
I'm grateful that I knew Paul for as long as I did. I was lucky to see his wonderful solo CD release recital in Benaroya back when it was a new building. It was great working with him over the years. He told me he really enjoyed performing with me, and as we got to know each other better and better, performing together really did become a bonding experience. I have particularly fond memories of quartets and quintets by Crumb and Mirai, which we did with Angelique, who's also performing today, and of Flegra by Xenakis, conducted by his mentor, Robert Aitken. I'm going to play a short piece that I think is a kindred spirit of the works that Paul performed that night in Benaroya. It's a movement from Inscriptions by the Israeli-American composer Shulamit Ran. I'm sure Paul would enjoy it because I saw him perform some of her music in the same hall with the Seattle Chamber Players with the composer present. This is the second movement, Rondino, mostly tongue-in-cheek.
Janice Katek has been another Cornish colleague of Paul Taub's over the years. She's a composer for the concert space, multimedia, dance, and theater. Her work acclaimed for its visceral connection to social issues. Janice wrote Agrarian Chants in 1997 and dedicated the music to Paul Taub. She tells us the movements have no separate titles. The last one is the one I have chosen for this event. It represents a group meeting of the local farmers of contiguous properties, discussing, sometimes agreeing, sometimes arguing over their shared issues of growing food. And with a message from Janice, here's Lori DeLuca.
This is from Janice. Dear Paul, a man possessing genuine sweetness. What an amazing, unique, and loyal friend and colleague for over 45 years. We both moved from San Francisco area to Seattle in 1979 to 1980 to join the newly formed Cornish music faculty. Paul and I became primary collaborators. He commissioned, premiered, toured, and recorded many of my chamber and solo flute pieces, as well as 6 internationally screened documentary films for PBS, museum installations, and several independent film projects. Paul was a worker bee, a quietly passionate person who served community like it was the most natural, important thing for him. I believe it was, and also his own personal mode of building his career as a musician. He told me years ago that he learned to give in this way by having spent childhood years at Bucks Rock, a summer camp geared towards socialist values, leading by giving to the cause of community. For example, Ben and Jerry were also graduates of Buck Rocks. With his devotion, Paul gave a lot to the evolution of new music, both in the Pacific Northwest as guidance to many students, many hundreds of younger flutists across the United States, and he worked with many outstanding composers throughout the globe, along with the Seattle Chamber Players and as a solo artist. Paul was young when he died. He lived an exceptional life, and we all here tonight have been touched by his generosity and brilliance. Thank you.
Another example of Paul Taub tapping the talents of one of his colleagues and asking for new work. In this case, Paul commissioning the composer, guitarist, improviser, and fly fisher, Tom Baker. Tom, whose work explores themes of grief, loss, redemption, of the fly fisher, takes us at Time of Rivers. In describing his piece, Tom says, "The Time of Rivers is a long cycle of works that are for various instrumentations and ensembles. Each of these works contains a number of moments which I have tried to transcribe in notebooks during my frequent hikes in rivers across the Northwest as a fly fisher." This piece was commissioned by my colleague, the virtuoso flute player Paul Taub, for an amazing ensemble of performers in Seattle. The 15 moments assembled here are meant to be performed in any order. Here are members of the Seattle Modern Orchestra: Sarah Pyle, bass flute, bass clarinetist Angelique Poteet, Abby Blackwell, bass, and Bonnie Whiting, percussion. This is 15 moments from The Time of Rivers by Tom Baker. Paul Taub was an accomplished and eloquent writer who dedicated a lot of his energy to promoting music for flute and nurturing the work of flutists who wrote and performed that music. In the spring of 2013, the issue of the Flute Quarterly, Paul wrote about MacArthur Fellow, flute soloist, collaborative artist, and arts entrepreneur Claire Chase. He said of Claire, whether brokering the creative energy of 33 musicians into the mold-breaking ice ensemble or with an appreciative nod to Varese, plotting her own history-making place in the future, emerging flutist Claire Chase herself is Exhibit A in the lineup of evidence for why she was awarded a MacArthur Fellowship Genius Grant. Through her solo work and outstanding leadership of the 10-year-old International Contemporary Ensemble, or ICE, Chase is in the vanguard of the American and international field of contemporary music. A graduate of Oberlin Conservatory and winner of the 2008 Concert Artists Guild competition, she is ICE's artistic director, a group many consider to be the most innovative and far-reaching ensemble for new music in the United States. Claire Chase contributes tonight via video. We hear the work of the composer born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1974, Marcos Balter. Alone is a short meditative work written for Claire Chase, which the composer was inspired to write for her while listening to her practice Debussy, Varese, and Bach at an artist's retreat. The flute plays a meditative, ornamented melody, while the percussionist sustains soft tones and also runs her finger around the rim of a glass, producing, in this case, a perfectly tuned B as a ground tone. Periodic light triangle strokes complete the remarkable soundscape. Here's Claire Chase with Alone for Flute and Wine Glasses by Marcos Balter. Alexandra Gardner was in Seattle in recent seasons as composer in residence at the Seattle Symphony. Her work, The Way of Ideas, was given its world premiere by Paul Taub and the Seattle Chamber Players as part of the Icebreaker 4 Festival in 2008. Paul plays flute in this next performance of the piece with Mikhail Schmidt violin, clarinetist Lori DeLuca, and Joshua Roman cello. The title is inspired by a quote from Philip Pullman's book, The Golden Compass. The quote reads, "The idea hovered and shimmered delicately, like a soap bubble, and she dared not even look at it directly in case it burst. But she was familiar with the way of ideas, and she let it shimmer, looking away, thinking about something else." In this music, Alexandra says, "I wanted to fold this concept into a musical landscape. Textures expand and contract, and the focus twists and turns to reveal threads of intertwined rhythms and gestures that encompass a continually transforming organism." Flutist, improviser, and composer Leanna Keith took inspiration for this world premiere performance we are about to hear from the virtuosic bass flute performances of her friend and colleague Paul Taub, and wrote this music in homage to his ever-growing legacy, which stemmed from his kindness. And you can't say enough about what a generous, kind, and supportive presence Paul Taub was with everyone he encountered. This entire program this evening is certainly testament to that. Leanna is currently a co-director of the chamber music ensemble Kin of the Moon with violist Heather Bentley and pianist Kaylee Lane Eaton. Here they are with the world premiere of Leanna's From Below.
Before we begin, I just wanted to say a few words about Paul. When I first met him, I was entirely intimidated. I was still in graduate school, and I felt like I was meeting a legend. And he very quickly showed me that there was nothing to be intimidated for because he was so generous and giving and kind. He was the first person to really believe in my work and what I was doing here in Seattle, and it was just such an honor to work with him and to get to know him. The piece From Below is inspired by a concept that I was thinking of as I was trying to figure out how I could possibly make sounds for Paul, and I thought that his kindness came somewhere so deep that perhaps it came from below the earth. So this is From Below.
One of the brilliant performers that Paul and the Seattle Chamber Players turned to over the years for regular collaboration is Tomoko Mukayama, the Dutch-Japanese pianist, visual artist, and director. Her work involves arts projects and installations playing with the conventions of the concert format. Tomoko melding music with modern dance, fashion, and visual art. She's given many performances with the Seattle Chamber Players here in town, recorded with the Seattle Symphony, and toured with the SCP in the Netherlands, Denmark, and other countries. Here is Tomoko Mukayama's contribution to tonight's program.
Paul, this is music by Louis Andriessen called Memory of Roses. I think we played for first time the music by Louis. Paul, rest in peace. It was always fun to play with you. Goodbye.
DeLuca of the Seattle Chamber Players will join me in a moment as we lift up the role that flutist Robert Aitken and Paul Taub played in one another's lives. I'll start with a quote from The Essence of Robert Aitken, an essay by Paul Taub. This article first appeared in the winter 2019 issue of the Flutist Quarterly. Were it only for Robert Aitken's more than 60 recordings, ranging from the complete concerti of C.P.E. Bach to all the flute solos and flute chamber music of Toru Takemitsu, there would be no question that his impact on the world of music is significant and meaningful. The recordings reveal not only the singular musical voice of the flutist, composer, and conductor, but also the wide-ranging interests of a man whose musical journeys have taken him from chant to Bach to the music of the most creative and influential composers of the 20th and 21st centuries. But the recordings are only the most obvious documentation of Aitken as an artist and individual. Robert Aitken has had and continues to have a career quite different from that of most top flute soloists. In addition to a rich life as a touring soloist and chamber musician that followed his early career in the Vancouver Symphony and as principal flutist in the Toronto Symphony under Seiji Ozawa for 6 years in his 20s, Aitken has been internationally prominent as a composer, educator, conductor, advocate for new music by both the world's greatest living composers and young emerging composers, director of a major and long-lived new music series, founder of important music programs in different parts of Canada, and speaking of Canada, international artist who happens to be Canadian.
I have a little message from Bob, and then I'll follow that with a message from his daughter, Diane, who is also a really good friend of Paul's. Paul moved to Seattle in 1979, and as I taught for 20 summers on Vancouver Island and at the Banff Center at various times throughout the year, it was not long before we each knew each other and became good friends. He attended the Banff Center Advanced Studies in Music program, and when I was the director, became my invaluable assistant for music at Shawnigan during 9 years. Paul assisted me on many projects, including Aristoxenos, I can't pronounce that, sorry, in Greece, the recording of Henry Brandt's music in New York, and smaller projects in Toronto. The National Flute Association commissioned him to interview me for what ultimately became 9 hours of live conversation, which now rests in the Library of Congress. And Paul, through his great generosity, persuaded the Seattle Modern Orchestra to give me a wonderful celebratory concert. My daughter Diane also worked with Paul on numerous occasions, and with my wife Marian and other daughter Karen. We felt he was part of our family. Our musical tastes were similar as far as the flute was concerned, but regarding contemporary music, they were not always the same, but rather complementary. Paul was principally attracted to the music of Eastern Europe, with composers like Arvo Pärt, Valentin Silvestrov, Peteris Vasks, and Concelli, while I spent my time dealing with the extra musical challenges of Heinz Holliger, Vinko Globokar, Maurizio Kagel, and Helmut Lachermann. Our shared affection was for the music of Henry Brandt, Lou Harrison, and John Cage. Our bi-weekly telephone conversation was packed with information, much of it valuable, which I used every day. Paul was totally committed to all that he undertook in his life. He was loved and appreciated by all who knew him. I miss him terribly, but am happy to have known such an exceptional human being. I'm sure his wife, Susan, is just as proud. Thank you, Paul, for having graced mine and my family's lives. You will always be remembered. This is a message from Diane, Robert Aitken's daughter. One thing about Paul upon which we can all agree, he was a gamer, a great supportive friend and colleague, a model citizen. At this time of year, as spring eases into summer, Paul and I would often speak. He would write about his upcoming walks and trips with Susan now that school was out. NFA activities and baseball season were revving up. Cool no local wines and new music to check out, particularly bass flute stuff. How's the family? The list goes on. Even though we lived so far apart in different countries on different sides of the continent, we were still close friends. I'm sure we all have pictures of Paul in our mind's eye. And looking back, I found one photo which captures Paul's true spirit. He was the model for our art class at Music at Shawnigan in 1989. For several summers on Vancouver Island, esteemed Canadian artist Tanabe taught the musicians drawing, and of course, we needed a model, so Paul volunteered. We learned a lot about perspective, balance, shading, a gazillion ideas to later apply into musical situations. The funniest part about our art adventures was later in the day when we displayed our unsigned work all around the dining hall. People quickly discovered who the natural artists were or weren't. Everyone guessed my drawings. They looked like caricatures. It was not an Iggy Pop life class moment, but Paul, never shy, definitely stepped up to the plate. Be well, everyone. Paul, you now are at rest. Your positive energy will last forever. To quote you, I hope, maybe even believe, though I could be accused of too much optimism.
Unofficial father of Jewish music, Joel Engel, who lived from 1867, paved the way for movement that used Yiddish and Hebrew folk songs as the basis of a serious art form. Kodai and Bartok and Engel went out to the shtetls of Eastern Europe, writing down the villagers' songs and then composing music-inspired. He was among the first to preserve and document traditional Ashkenazi music. Byron Schenkman, the pianist and harpsichordist, music presenter, and member of the Seattle University faculty, joins us now to celebrate Paul and to celebrate Joel Engel and help us get to know more about the work of Joel Engel. Here is the Engel Hebrew Melody, Opus 19. Today's concert and Paul Taub's life are such rich celebrations of musical partnership. So it's appropriate that a couple more of Paul's Cornish colleagues over the years join us for music that brings to mind an extraordinary musical partner. Paul was a musician's musician, and so was the composer of this next tune, Jimmy Rowles. Rowles was a favorite collaborator of Billie Holiday, Peggy Lee, Julie London, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, and many more. So here are two of the many gifted and treasured colleagues that Paul Taub crossed musical paths with in his life. We'll hear from Chuck Deerdorf, bass, and Hans Teuber, alto flute, playing The Peacocks by Jimmy Rowles.
Hello, my name is Chuck Deerdorf, and this is Hans Teuber. We were both colleagues and friends of Paul Taub's for many years, and we miss him. So we're going to play this song that I think he would like. It's called The Peacocks by a wonderful pianist-composer named Jimmy Rowles. And Hans is going to play an alto flute that was passed on to him from Paul. So that means a lot to both of us. Anyway, this is The Peacocks.
The Portuguese composer and radio producer Luis Tinoco joins us via video now with his homage to Luciano Berio called The Delirium of My Desire, a consequenza for solo flute in memoriam Luciano Berio, composed in 2006. One of Berio's most celebrated works is the cycle of 14 sequenzas for solo instruments, composed between 1958 and 2002, exploring new techniques and the virtuoso skills of the performers. In his piece for solo flute, Tinoco uses Berio's Sequenza 1 as a starting point for sounds that transform into a section at the end marked delirious. The performance is often prefaced by verses of Eduardo Sanguinetti, and here begins your desire, which is the delirium of my desire. Music is the desiring of desires. Here's composer Luis Tinoco and solo flutist Ana Maria Ribeiro.
Hello, this is Luis Tinoco from Lisbon, sending a warm greeting to all of the Paul's friends that are gathering today in this very special day, and I feel very honored to be a small part of it, and sending a very special hug and greeting to Susan and my friends from the Seattle Chamber Players. On this day I would like to share with you a solo flute piece that I wrote a few years ago when Luciano Berio died, so it's a tribute in memoriam piece inspired by the beginning of his sequenza for flute, and then the piece develops to something different. It's a short piece, and my good friend Ana Maria Ribeiro, who is the principal flutist from the Porto Casa da Música Symphony Orchestra, she very kindly agreed to play this piece for you. It's a very fast and technically challenging piece, and Ana Maria hadn't played it for a while, so she was very brave to prepare it again in such a short time, and so I thank also Ana Maria for her generous contribution to this tribute today, and I send you all my warmest greetings, and please stay safe and have a happy day together.
Born in 1964, Stephen Goss is a Welsh composer, guitarist, and scholar. One of the champions of his work is the Seattle-based guitarist Michael Partington, who directs the guitar program at the University of Washington here in Seattle. Stephen Goss writes of his piece composed in 2016, Watts Chapel is named after the Arts and Crafts Memorial Chapel built by Mary Watts in commemoration of her husband, the artist G.F. Watts. The chapel is situated close to my home in Surrey, England, and offers passers-by the opportunity for reflection and quiet contemplation. My piece draws on the music of Gustav Mahler, written around the time the chapel was built, specifically fragments of the 3rd and 9th symphonies and the song Ich bin der Welt abhanden gekommen, I'm lost to the world, from Rückert-Lieder. The Mahler references concern remembrance and the transience of mortality. My music is slow and spacious. It attempts to evoke the peaceful atmosphere of Watts Chapel. Here's Michael Partington with Watts Chapel by Stephen Goss. Example of the many roles that Paul played in his life, in this case again as a catalyst for the creation of new work. Paul Taub and his friend violinist Misha Schmidt worked with the National Flute Association in 2008 to bring this new work to the flute repertory. The premiere was at the National Flute Association convention in the summer of that year in Kansas City. Today is only the second performance ever of this work by the late Georgian composer Gia Cancelli. The composer wrote about this piece. Ninna Nanna means lullaby in Italian. My music is slow, and sometimes people tend to take a nap during it. This time, even the title helps. However, I would like to hope that the willingness to listen to the work through to its end will prove to be stronger than a temptation to find yourself in a sweet sleep. And Paul Taub, making note of Cancelli's sense of humor, left us this note about the music. Cancelli's lullaby at times is soothing, at times saccharine sweet, and at times humorous with a touch of sarcasm. But it is often underpinned with a creepy tension that seems to suggest an impending nightmare. Robin Peary is the flutist here with Mikhail Schmidt and Victoria Parker violins, Artur Gierski viola, David Saby cello. This is Ninna Nanna per Anna by Gia Cancelli.
Just a couple of words before we start. So we're almost at the end of this amazing event, marathon concert in memory and for our dear friend Paul. And if it would be just regular Seattle music marathon, I'm sure Paul would be with us on stage. Maybe he would even organize the whole thing. And or when he wouldn't be playing, we would see him sitting in the audience and listening to us and supporting us. And one thing actually I want to say, it was so many wonderful words about Paul. He was most incredible colleague. He was so supportive. And I remember going to almost every concert I played or went to my friends to hear playing, and Paul was there, so kind, so supportive. And see his beautiful smile after concert and talk with him and get his feedback was such an amazing thing. And but today was also a special day because as we're emerging from pandemic, it was so wonderful to see our Seattle community here backstage at the Royal Room talking and kind of reuniting. And it was very difficult, very sad, very tragic year with really horrible losses. And I feel this piece which we play, it's great epitaph to Paul, but also I feel this music will bring some kind of sense of consolation to all of us who had to live through all these difficult losses of the last year. So here's to Paul.
Our finale tonight is a video made here on the stage of the Royal Room. This music powerfully embodies the sense of community, compassion, collegiality, and collaboration that Paul Taub represented in his 68 years in this world. Tom Joad by Woody Guthrie is probably the best known and celebrated of Woody's large collection of Dust Bowl songs, the music complementing the writing of John Steinbeck in The Grapes of Wrath and bringing to mind the 1930s era photographs of Dorothea Lange. My late mother was born on a farm in western Kansas in 1932 at the time when that dust blowed hard, as my late great-uncle, the Kansas farmer John Davis, used to say to us. The way Woody Guthrie captures perseverance by folks like Uncle John in the face of that kind of devastation in the Dust Bowl is deeply compelling. Here's Paul Taub with pianist-composer Wayne Horvitz and Woody Guthrie's Tom Joad from 1940.
I used to always see Paul on his bike, in his helmet, leaving Cornish, coming to Cornish, sometimes going to the gym around town, so I thought I'd start here. I first met Paul with Misha at breakfast to discuss a commission for the Seattle Chamber Players. This began a long relationship with the Chamber Players, which in many ways jump-started my work as a composer. Paul was especially awesome. He was an advocate. He had new ideas. We worked out ideas together, and he was always extremely supportive. And he even garnered some other commissions from other people for me. I was always extremely grateful for that. The piece you're about to hear is unusual in that it may be the only case where Paul and I played together or close to it. It was at a concert for the music of Woody Guthrie, and it's based on an arrangement I did of the old ballad Tom Joad. It was not only a chance for Paul to improvise, which he was always eager to do and didn't get to do a lot of. He sounds incredible here, but also a little bit of a connection that we had about old school left-wing politics, progressive politics, and in particular, the history of progressive politics. In some ways, we were two bald guys who used to have long hair, hitchhiked around the country, and we enjoyed sharing some of those fond memories. I probably shouldn't be doing this. I miss you, Paul. We all miss you.
CC on the track, boy. CC on the track, boy.
you